All right, remember, hands under my butt the whole time, so I'm not touching anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome back to Punchline, the marketing podcast where we're not afraid to say what everyone else is thinking. My name is Beth Cormack.
And I'm Drue Stennett, and today we're diving into the absolute chaos that ensues when your creative brain collides with a spreadsheet that might as well have been written in hieroglyphics.
We're talking about that like special kind of panic that I feel like only people on like the creative brand marketing side of things understand when you're in a meeting with a bunch of like either like the growth marketing team or a bunch of analytics data driven people, and they're all talking numbers and really scary numbers, and you're like, what the hell are they talking about? What do these acronyms mean? What do I even say? You're like slacking your coworker on the side being like, can you please like transcribe this to me? I don't know what I'm saying. What am I even doing here?
So, if you've ever felt your soul leave your body during a quarterly business review, or you've mastered the art of saying, let me circle back on that when someone asks you about projections, you found your people.
Let's get into it. This is Punchline. Okay, Drue. So we are both creative marketing girlies. I feel like I've seen memes and stuff where it's like the two types of marketing people, where you have the people that we are, which is like butterfly emoji, disco balls, sparkle, like funsies. And then you have the other side of marketing, which is more on like the data analytics side, where it's like numbers, graphs, like conversion rate, all these different things. And it's something that I've really struggled with over the course of my career is like, I am not a numbers person naturally. I'm very much on that creative side of things. And I feel like in both of our respective fields in social media and in like the content marketing world, of course, in this economy, being able to tie your success to the bottom line of a business is really important. So being able to talk comfortably at least, or just like understand the other side of marketing in terms of the data is really important, but it can also be extremely daunting. And I will never forget like when I first got into corporate and being in one of those meetings and I'm like, fuck, I am in way over my head. I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about.
No, that's so true. I can remember when I was interviewing for my current role, I was being interviewed by one of those people that is just like super heavy into the data and analytics side of things. And he was asking me these questions. And I got off the call like, no way in hell am I getting that job, because I didn't know anything. I was like, fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And your girl froze. I
Yeah.
just totally shut down. So, as we know, in the job market right now, in the economy, it is so important, even as really creative people, to be able to tie these creative ideas and brand moves that we're making to tangible business outcomes. And unfortunately, that does mean that you have to kind of speak this language and jargon of knowing what CAC is, what the hell ROAS is, all these acronyms that 5 years ago, Drue might have been off camera Googling what the hell is ROI. But I think over the years, you and I both have made a lot of progress in kind of understanding this language and being able to field both being super creative, inspired people and being able to kind of speak that language to get ahead in the marketing world.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Googling what those mean just like hit a part of my soul because I'll never forget that. Like I just said earlier, like coming into the world of corporate from freelancing full time, where like, I don't know, I didn't never talked about like LTV to CAC or like ROI or ROAS or whatever the hell. I had no idea. So I remember my first job, I was put on, I was an organic social media manager. So I was the first full-time social media manager hire at this company, but I was put on the performance marketing team, which is a little bit, I feel like not usually the case. Like I feel like I would usually be put on like the brand team or I don't know, performance marketing. I was surrounded by, I think there was like 5 or 6 of us on the team. But everybody else, their numbers were tied to conversions. That's how like they kind of tracked their KPIs and their success. And LTV to CAC was like their North Star. And I can't track organic social in that way. So I just remember being in those initial meetings and I was like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. Like, what am I doing here? And I know we talked about this in imposter syndrome episode with Chi a couple weeks back, but I just felt so like, I'm like, why did I get hired here? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And one of the core values of this company was we heart data. So that was like a thing across the organization that like everybody was kind of good at. And I felt so like I don't want to, it's not like left out in terms of like they were doing it on purpose, but I was just like, I felt so stupid. I was like, I don't know what this is. And they had like, I remember they had like a glossary of terms at the company that they use that they sent to me that was just literally like a bunch of these acronyms and defining them and what they meant. But even looking at that was like so daunting because I remember having it, I would have that glossary on one screen on like one of my monitors. And then when I was in team meetings, I would be listening to it and then like cross-referencing because I had no idea what they're talking about. And I was also really afraid to speak out and ask questions because everybody else on my team knew what it
Yeah.
was. And then I'm sitting there being like, we got 10 likes on this post. And I'm just like
Yeah.
undervaluing also like what I'm doing and what my metrics are because I'm getting, I'm against people who are like measuring an LTV to CAC and using all these really big spreadsheets. And I just remember it feeling so, so daunting.
No, that's so fair. I think the way that I've kind of started thinking about this over the years in my career is this might be kind of a stupid comparison, but I kind of think of data as the kale of marketing. Like, yeah, you can force yourself to eat it raw and stare at these soul crushing spreadsheets and dashboards that just like, I don't know, they make my eyes glaze over. And technically, you're getting what you need from those experiences, but like, at what cost? For me, it's my will to live. Like, that's just not how I enjoy spending my day. But the thing that took me like years to figure out is that you can absolutely take that same data and blend it with some creative thinking, some storytelling, maybe a cute visualization or two, some color coding, and suddenly it's this delicious strawberry smoothie that doesn't make you want to die inside. The numbers are still doing their important shit, but now they're actually helping you make your point instead of making you look like a deer in headlights during your next presentation.
Yep.
And I swear to God, once you figure this out, you might actually start looking forward to the data part. I never thought I would say that, but like
Yep.
once you kind of figure out that approach, I'm not saying that you're going to become a spreadsheet girly overnight, but you might catch yourself getting a little bit more excited about these metrics when you see how they can back up your creative instincts, get better buy-in from leadership,
Yep.
and overall like fight for you and not against you.
Mhm.
The secret isn't avoiding the kale. It's like, this is so dumb. It's like finding your perfect smoothie recipe, I think.
Yeah, I love that comparison. And I think when it really clicked for me, I feel like I just became such a better, well-rounded marketer because especially if you're working in the corporate world, like you said, understanding this data and how it contributes to success is so important and such a big thing in getting buy-in from leadership so you can act on more creative projects. So if you're pitching something to your higher ups and you're able to just be like, oh, I want to, if on one side, if you're just like, oh, it'll perform well. It's just like good for the vibes. It'll be funny. Sure. Like that, those are metrics in itself. Don't get me wrong. But like, if you're able to pitch it in a way that's like, you're able to tell a fuller funnel story, like we said earlier, like speak the language of some of these folks that really have a seat at the table in making these decisions, it'll completely change your role and how people see you and how people perceive you. And I think it's such an important skill to have. And I think and this might be a hot take, but I see a lot of chatter in the social media manager world around like there's so much frustrations around, my KPIs are important, impressions, likes, video views. Everyone thinks they're just like vanity metrics, whatever, but they really matter. And I agree. And I understand the frustrations that come with that. Like a lot of times those things aren't necessarily valued at an organization because they're not necessarily directly tied to ROI or revenue. And those are all valid frustrations. And I've dealt with that many times over my career is like, you feel like you're getting dealt impossible hands in terms of organic social is not a sales tool. I cannot be expected to sell something or get like these really high conversion rates on a post. Half the time I don't even want to post a hyperlink with the post because it's going to hurt my performance overall. So in these things you have to continually explain to people who don't understand and like also maybe don't care to understand in the way that you want them to. But going back to like my hot take, I think not enough social media managers are put enough importance in the like really granular data. Not that they should. Like vanity metrics are important, but you have to be able to tell a fuller funnel story in order to tie what you're doing to the success of the company. And that's what it all comes down to, especially in this job market. Like, I feel like whenever I'm looking for a job right now, and one of my biggest selling points is the fact that I was on a performance marketing team, and I may not, be in the depths of Meta Business Suite, or I may not be building LTV to CAC spreadsheets, but I know what it means and I know how to look at it and tie that to what I'm doing,
Yeah.
even if it's not directly correlated. And I think that's a huge selling point, and it can be a really uncomfortable thing to get used to, especially if you're on the creative side. And data and numbers to me used to be so daunting and scary. But again, once you actually allow yourself to understand it and not be so resistant towards it because it's not your job, you're really restricting yourself and becoming just a more well-rounded marketer, and also, getting ahead at work. Like, really, you're getting more buy-in and things like that.
This is so off brand for me. I think I identify as a numbers girly now. And that really is just, I know. God, I know. I know. But the thing is, I think I can identify as a numbers girly now because I have overcome this intimidation and fear that I have.
Yeah.
Like, candidly, when I was a freshman in college, I went to my advisor with big dreams to have this marketing career. Like, I just discovered the field, I guess. And I wanted to work specifically in social media and advertising. And that was my dream. And he told me I would have to take 4 statistics classes for a marketing degree. And I said, never mind. This is not my dream. I'm out of here. Thank you so much for your time. I ended up majoring by the end of it all in sociology, which did require 2 very painful stats classes, and public relations, which required no math, which maybe is why I chose that degree. But
Communications major.
We're here. We're here. I know AP style. I don't know calculus. But with that being said, I was just so intimidated by numbers. And growing up, math was never super easy for me. And it was always just a very painful experience.
Same.
And now that I'm kind of grown in my marketing career and I've experienced a lot of different companies at different sizes and different demands of my roles, I think that I've just figured out how to make the data work in my favor. And in my current role specifically, it's just so important. And I would say that this role is the first time that I have KPIs and metrics that are I get I've always had KPIs, but in this specific role, what I measured on,
more lower funnel.
Yeah. And it's so easy for me to tie it to tangible business results. And it's the first time in my career that I've been in that position. But I also just kind of forced myself to get over this aversion that I have to data. Yeah. And luckily I work with some women specifically that there's a senior manager on our SEO team who's talked about this really openly on LinkedIn and was kind of in the same position as us, where she did not identify as a data and numbers girl at all. And now she's made a whole career out of it. And I just work with really smart people who help me be smarter, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge thing, is having a support. Because I would, when I first joined this company, I was so in over my head, and I was afraid to ask those questions. And all along, I could have, I was encouraged to, and I had a really awesome manager who, at one point I just kind of let put my ego to the side. And I was like, listen, I feel really out of place in these meetings. I don't know what they're talking about half the time, and I feel just really stupid. And she was openly admitted to me too. She was she's I didn't know what the hell this was either, when I first started. And it took me a while to get used to it too, and learning all these acronyms and what they mean. And I think another thing to that's important to note when you work in marketing, especially if you think of your directors of marketing or senior directors of marketing, they're not experts in every single area of marketing. They're not, but they know enough about just how it all kind of works together in order to get to that level of seniority. You don't have to know, I remember my boss saying this, my former boss saying this too. It was she knew nothing about running Facebook ads. Her person that worked under her was the paid social person who was all in that. She's that's why we have specialists and people that are focusing in those niches. But she's you don't have to, it's not about being able to be in the weeds and understand every single facet of every single area of marketing. It's really, again, just about being able to tell that fuller story. And I think when you look at data in that way, it's less about the nitty gritty numbers and the formulas and the very specific, when you go on a spreadsheet and you click on that singular cell and you see this super long formula at the top. That's really scary. But good thing for you is that you probably don't need to know what any of that means. You just need to know, be able to tell a story. And I think when you look at it in that way, it becomes a lot less daunting. And I think what you said is so correct about like, I think we have naturally like have such an aversion to numbers because I grew up really struggling with math too. And I did really well in school. So like math was always really frustrating for me because I had to stay after school for extra help all the time. My mom, do you have Kumon in your area? It's like a, did
I
you
don't know. I don't know what that is. It's also
okay.
probably important context that I was homeschooled K through 12. So
Okay. Okay. I didn't
yeah.
know that, but
Imagine being bad at math and being homeschooled. That's
okay.
just like not normal.
Yeah. Okay, so Kumon is this chain. It's a franchise of like tutoring kind of. I think it's specifically for math. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I just have
Yeah.
like very vivid memories of my mom making me go to Kumon and be better at math, but it didn't work. And I just like hated it
Okay.
so much. But yeah, so I feel like I always struggle with that growing up and it kind of I feel like it set the tone for like my marketing career of just like being afraid of numbers and feeling really stupid when people it comes so naturally for some people and for me I can't. But as soon as I let go of that like aversion to it and like me being afraid of it, that was the biggest problem. It wasn't me not being able to understand, it was me just being afraid that I like being afraid of it and just not
Mhm.
fully leaning in and asking questions. And once it clicks, it just kind of clicks. And again, I don't need to know what all those formulas mean. I don't need to know like all the nitty gritty of it. It's been such a game changer for me to just, again, be able to see the fuller picture and how things work together across various different departments within marketing. And data is such a huge part of that.
I think one of the most important skills that you can have as a marketer is the humility and ability to ask questions. Early in my career, that was so scary to me because I never wanted to look dumb. But the only time you're going to look dumb is when you don't take the opportunity to not know things. There comes a point in your career where it's going to be too late for you to be asking some questions. Like, that maybe sounds harsh, but I think it's true. You're in marketing for 10 years. You can't really be asking what CAC is 10 years into your marketing career. Like, you should
Yeah.
probably know that by now, even if you don't fully understand it. The baseline knowledge is so important, and I think that also just speaks to having a really humble and collaborative mindset and understanding that the best marketing teams aren't solo generalists. They're like really built out, well-oiled machines that just support each other so well. I don't think that you need to have a 200-person marketing team for it to be a machine. I think that really scrappy, nimble marketing teams can operate that way too. It's just kind of about your perspective and priority.
Yeah. I was literally just thinking that. I was like, I feel like both of us have worked on like not big marketing teams, especially like our core group. I feel like in the tech space, in the software, SaaS space, whatever you want to call it, we have usually like a lot of like limited resources. And I've used this comparison before, but like not a lot of us will in our lifetime work with Barbie sized marketing budgets where
Yeah.
you can just you can put millions and millions of dollars into an awareness campaign. Even if you did have that budget, I still think it's important to be able to understand, how to tie that to the success of the business.
Just for transparency, I also want to say I don't want somebody listening to think that I'm a dirty little liar. I do work on a huge marketing team right now. Yeah, before I was at HubSpot, the biggest marketing team I ever worked on in its entirety was 3 people. So that was quite a jump for me. So I just want to not be a dirty little liar. I can just hear the comments coming in. But yeah, like I said, prior to this, like used to working on super tiny teams and having to be really nimble and like flex into a lot of different roles. But thinking through creative pitches, I will say early in my career, I had really great relationships with my managers, and I didn't need to know anything. Like, I truly was in a position where like, I was just a young female employee on mostly very male dominated teams. So when I had an idea, like they were kind of just like, yeah, go do it. Like I didn't really have to get buy-in. And that was so cool being like 22 and being able to do that. But then when I started working at companies that maybe didn't operate that way, and were taking me a little bit more seriously, I had quite a learning curve to overcome. I specifically was working in a growth marketing team at this time, where these people, they lived and died for the LTV to CAC ratio. And I was Googling what those acronyms meant and team calls, trying to keep up. And honestly, this is actually so embarrassing for me to admit, but I think the first time that I really had to lean into numbers and was able to do that successfully was in my current role. Unfortunately, I'm in an environment where like I'm like allowed or maybe even encouraged to fail sometimes, which is super cool to like have that autonomy and freedom. But and I think the company that I was at before was a really interesting opportunity for me because it was so heavily focused on growth marketing, and that world was so foreign to me. For all the good, the bad, and the ugly of that job, like I learned fast in that role. And I also worked with, again, multiple women who just like made me feel very psychologically safe to ask these questions, even if they were things that like I probably should have known before I was stepping into that role. But I got a crash course in all of that, which I think really primed me for my role at HubSpot.
Yeah, I talked about this before too, about like the importance of just being able to tell like a fuller marketing story, and data is such a big part of that. But I think when it comes to pitching creative projects too, like it's not necessarily being able to be like, I'm predicting that we're gonna get, like this percentage LTV to CAC or like this conversion rate. Like I don't think it's about that. It's being able to take, like for me, I can think of a specific project. When I worked at a previous company, we were changing our messaging to like to like a new target demographic. We were like transitioning from like a B2C to a B2B audience. So they were trying to pitch or like target people who are like corporate social media managers or first time like, or like people who are like needed to be able to edit video in their job, but hadn't done it before previously or like professionally. And I worked for a stock media company. So like that was, we're trying to say that like with our product, you can create more video faster. And that was kind of our tagline. And I was looking at the messaging and this is where I can think the creative side comes in too. Cause that is, I know we're talking a lot about data and numbers and how important it is, but it is so much more powerful when you have that creative brain that comes naturally because you're able to bring something to the table that a lot of these people who are so deep in the numbers, which is also important, that they may not have. And this creative side is so important too. So I was like looking at this messaging and I'm like, okay, we're basically telling our audience that like, if you just log onto our website, download a stock video, you'll be able to create amazing video and you'll be able to get all this ROI and all this video marketing that you're doing. And then you'll be able to get more buy-in to create more and more video from your higher ups, which video editing is a skill. Like people are obviously hired in full-time roles to be able to do it full-time. And now there's roles that are specifically corresponding to social content videos. So now you have videographers, and then you also have people who are trained to do short form content, which is a whole other thing in itself. So I felt like we were doing a disservice to our prospects and customers by having that sort of messaging. So I'm like, there has to be some sort of bridge, education, something that we're able to provide these people to make them feel more confident to create more video. So I pitched this 9-episode YouTube course called The Beginner's Guide to Creating Video. I brought up to my boss in a one-on-one. It was a very unbaked idea at the time, but I was like, we should be providing some sort of resource for these people, for not only just like prospective customers, but also our current customers, be able to provide them something to be like, here's how to use our product better. And, at the time, I remember like getting a little bit of like back and forth on whether or not it should be gated content. Should we only provide it to like a certain demographic of people? But I was like, I really think that we should have it ungated on our YouTube channel for anyone to see and anyone to use. And I was like very heavy on it not being like a sales thing. I was like, this has to be like strictly educational. And of course we can organically pull our product into it. But it was like a 9-episode course on how to, get started on producing a video, like storyboarding and all the pre-production into post-production. And then the last few episodes were about like how to scale and analyze the performance and be able to like scale your production and scale, your analytics and all these different things when it comes to video marketing. But, if I just were to pitch that up front as like, this is an organic social tactic, I wouldn't be able to get the buy-in because that's a lot of resources and bandwidth this company wasn't very big. I didn't have those resources just like have just an organic social project that was going to be that big. So I had to think, all right, not only can we use it as organic social, but we can cut it down into a bunch of different video ads. I can pull in the influencer and partnerships team and we can use some of that budget to have like big YouTubers host episodes. use those episodes to cut down into ads, which in influencer ads always perform really well for this company. So we have that. We can also use it as a sales enablement tool, hand it off to the sales team for them to send to prospects and be like, here's a free resource for you to like understand, video marketing a little better, how to use our product and like how this can help you. So I really, and I'm contributing a lot of this to my former manager too, who was like also able to kind of bring this half-baked idea and really be able to pitch it to the people that, were able to give the green light on using all these resources. And we ended up renting out a studio. We pulled in the influencer team, and it ended up being this huge success. And it was like a really big pivotal part of my career because I feel like it was for the first time I was really able to like think bigger. And again, it's going back to the fact that I didn't need to know like all these nitty gritty things about the numbers and the KPIs that I, wasn't exactly, fluent in, but I just needed to be able to tell a bigger story and how we're able to use this like organic social tactic and be able to spread it out across multiple different departments and use it to help better the business. Because at the end of the day, that's what they care about. How is this going to help how are these objectives going to help with business outcomes? So that's one that I can think of. I think that's a good example of tying creativity and numbers and also, again, bigger, broader data storytelling. And yeah, it's like you're kind of able to take this big project and cut it into multiple slices and hand it out to people and help contribute to their successes too.
I guess it would be the last episode that we talked about burnout. And I'm just kind of thinking another angle, like selling the listeners at home on really investing in your understanding of data, in addition to getting buy-in to be able to do really cool shit, being able to understand data in a way to prioritize your work and advocate for your team, I think is also so, so vital, because I think especially in the content space, a lot of content marketers that I'm talking to, like we're all kind of feeling the same pressure of two things. One is content that builds the brand and content that grows the business. That's like pressure number one that we're constantly being torn between. And then pressure number two is putting out a ton of content or putting out not as much content, but content that is really exciting and unique. And I think depending on the size of the organization that you're in, the priorities of leadership, if you're in a true content role, you're going to feel these pain points so much, and really being able to look at your data and understand, even if it means, and I think maybe we talked about this in episode 3 as well, but like, even if it means that you're doing a 6-week sprint that maybe is a little bit painful, being able to look back on those 6 weeks and go to leadership with hard evidence that the gut instinct didn't work, I think is so vital, and kind of having an attitude of letting the data say yes or no. That's been just an absolute game changer for me in my career and kind of dealing with those different areas of pressure.
%. And I used to be early in my career, I talked about this in an interview yesterday. I used to be very protective, also very kind of like sensitive about my work and people, and you might deal with this too in the content marketing space, but in social media especially, I feel like it's people often see it as like a dumping ground for content. So people will just like send you a message, be like, can you just post this on social? Can you just whatever?
Can you just
and
post
I'm like,
it?
yeah. And I'm like, no, I can't, so that's like a common thing that I feel like all social media managers deal with all the time, is getting constant pressure to just post shit. So I used to get really offended and really like I would draw a hard line in the sand being like, no, on the grounds of just like, this is my channel, why I'm not coming over to your department and dumping shit on you, like why do you feel like you can do that to me? And it was just very exhausting to just like have that energy, and they're not doing it to like offend or to harm, they just like don't know any better. So like instead of me, I would get like a video from the sales team and it's a very salesy video and they want me to post it on LinkedIn. And I'm like, no. And I used to get really offended, but now I kind of take the approach of like, I like the term, let's test it. 3 words that are so simple, so powerful, and just like protects your peace a lot too. So like at the end of the day, posting a shitty sales video it's not at the end of the world. It's not going to destroy your brand. It's not going to whatever. And if it becomes like, a pattern that you're constantly doing it, sure, it's going to hurt performance. But if you're getting constant pressure from them to post something, rather than being so protective over it, just post it. Post it and say, let's test it. And also before you post it, make sure that you're like explaining to them, hey, I have an alternative video or an alternative thing that I think we could do that would perform better, that may not be as salesy It's a lot more organic, but it's going to perform better. But sure, let's pit these two things like up against each other and see what works. And once you test it, I bet your idea is going to be a lot better performing than the other one. But now, instead of like just having this like arbitrary idea of what may or may not perform better, you have numbers and data to go back to them for the next time they want to ask you to post something and be like, hey, do you remember last time I posted this? Like, this is the performance bit, and this is the one that I posted, and it did a lot better. So like, let's continue on this path. And I think taking that approach sometimes is important because you have, and also not to say too, like maybe their idea will perform better. Who knows? Like you really don't know what is going to, sometimes what's going to like resonate with people online and what's going to do better. And it obviously all ties back to like your goals and your KPIs and things like that. But I think if you have data to go back to these people in a way that they understand, and being like, we tried it your way one time. It's not that we can't post everything that you want, but let's think about it in a different way. It's like, you want to put this messaging out to help with sales. Sure, let's talk to our video team and let's come up with a really cool, creative concept that feels more organic, but is still, you know, hitting the things that you want it to hit. So I think being able to have those comfortable conversations with people, and you're able, again, if you're able to have the data to back up past experiences with trying out what they wanted to do, is really important. So I really like the phrase, let's test it. It's like a good middle ground. It's neutral. Even if you know you're going to win, it's still just like you're hearing them out. Let's put it out in the universe and see what the audience decides.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, those three words come out of my mouth or my fingers in Slack quite often. Especially in my current role, we're going through a lot of changes and experimentation, and we're just testing everything. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of it because, to just be honest, there are often times where an idea that I think is going to totally fail just blows it out of the water. It only makes me look better of the day when I'm reporting on like net new context that I've generated through it's only helping everyone. So I think, yeah, like maybe my key takeaway for this episode is like one of the most important skills when it comes to being a data informed marketer is this attitude of humility.
And just being able to have, you know, open conversations with people. And I think there's so much to be said about truly collaborative marketing teams when everybody is talking to each other and you're sharing learnings and you're sharing data across different channels. That is helping everyone. Like, and I think that's something that I really pride myself in, is I feel like, you know, I'm always thinking about, you know, because you know, if you're a paid social marketer, you should be talking to the lifecycle team and being like, hey, what are some of the top headlines that are working in your emails? Because you could use that language to inform your paid ads and the headlines you're using in your paid ads and your copy. And there's just so much data to be shared across teams. And I work very closely with paid social teams on organic stuff, being like, if something's going to perform well on organic, 9 times out of 10, it's going to perform well as a paid ad. So like, let's test it. And I think that's such an important thing to have in marketing teams, is that attitude across the entire department. It's just like, let's test things. Let's continue to learn. Because, you know, one content piece might blow out of the water, and then a month later you could try the same thing in a different font and it tanks. So you just like never know. But it's like, there's so much, once you're comfortable looking at the data, understanding it, but not beating yourself up over like not knowing everything about it, I think you'll really be able to unlock yourself as a marketer and just become, you know, I think you'll be able to just grow so much more in your career when you're able to like I don't know, get rid of any imposter syndrome that often comes along with that side of marketing.
Yeah, I'm kind of kicking myself for not talking about this in our episode on imposter syndrome, because now that we're in this conversation, I'm kind of realizing live this savviness and literacy with marketing analytics is just been a game changer for me in terms of imposter syndrome. But I really like what you were saying about marketing teams who have really strong communication. And it's reminding me of a conversation I had earlier this week with one of my coworkers who runs a customer marketing, customer advocacy program at my company. And she used this phrase that she was like, I like working in public. And I was like, girl, I love working from a coffee shop. I'm with you. And I'm so stupid. What she was meaning is that she loves to like, even if she's talking to herself in a Slack thread, she loves working in that kind of space where there's natural visibility. And I never thought of that expression before, but now that she said it, I can't get it out of my head. And I think, especially if you are at a remote first company, I think that is so important. And maybe it does feel a little silly to talk to yourself in Slack, but in a channel where everyone can see it, I think that's just such a good attitude to have. And I think transparency goes so far in a
Yep.
successful marketing team. I've also kind of struggled with being like really territorial over your work. I think most creative people will run into that struggle at some point in their career, but having that working in public mindset, I think is so important in kind of overcoming that. And just, I don't know, 9 times out of 10, any conflict I've ever had at work related to that kind of pressure of like people asking me for something that I think doesn't make sense or like anything like that, 90% of the time, the issue is just a little bit of miscommunication or
Yep.
misunderstanding of
Yep.
my role or their role. And I
Yes.
think, yeah, I think we could have a whole episode on successful communication within marketing teams. And
Yeah.
I think I could share so many things that my team does really well and
Mhm.
things that we've tried in the past that just totally flop. I think that would be so interesting. So
Yeah.
if you're listening, please leave a comment if you would be into that, or send us a DM.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's like
yeah.
another really special skill that is underrated, especially. And I'm sure this is like just a general skill in the professional world, but I feel like especially with marketing, is that ability to, and I don't want to say to communicate, but like really just like to communicate effectively and understand that like I think it's like interpersonal communication. So like being self-aware or just like aware enough to know that when people are coming to you with requests, having that humility and letting go, being like whatever, and we talked about this too. It's like whatever they're working on is probably their most important thing they're working on, and they're projecting that onto you. Being able to remove yourself and remove your like your natural way to be territorial. I think because creative people run into this a lot because we're constantly getting kind of like nitpicked and people thinking that they can do our job really easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that constant kind of like outside whatever is the reason why we are like that, because it's like, no, don't touch my shit. Like, let me like work in my safe space here. But I think learning that skill in terms of like being able to hear people, see people where they're at, you know, not necessarily say, maybe you're saying no, but also being able to explain it in a way that makes them understand why you may not prioritize what they're asking or why you may want to do things differently. I think that is such an important skill that a lot of people look over. It's like a lot of times, like you said, it's just a matter of people not knowing or not understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a personal attack. I mean, I hope it's not, but like I would say
Yeah.
99% of the time, it's not a personal attack on you or your work ethic or what you do. It's just they don't know. And if they don't know, how are they supposed to understand? So I think being able to have those conversations in an effective way, so you don't have to keep having them. Because I think that's another thing. If you're just saying no, or you're being so protective over like these different things and you're still leaving them confused, they're going to keep coming back with the same sorts of requests and the same sorts of, you know, things that they want you to work on together or whatever. And if you're able to explain it up front, then they have a different mindset coming into it and you're able to
Yeah.
kind of change the way that you're doing things. And I think that's just such an important skill, because in marketing especially, you do have the two sides. You have the creative side, you have the data-driven numbers people, and a lot of times they don't always work together, and they're like they speak different languages. But again, there's so much overlap that I feel like should be happening that doesn't happen a lot at these companies, between like the brand side and like the growth marketing thing. I think there's so much to be learned across both sides, that, you know, and I think from the growth side to the brand side too, I think a lot of times they're resistant to really understand the creative side of things because they're so heads down focused on what they're doing that they don't open themselves up to the creative side. So I think it goes both ways for sure.
One of my biggest pet peeves is when I see people, and especially social media girlies, because I respect what you guys do so much. It makes me so mad when I see the kind of like self-deprecating jokes of like, I'm just here to post the memes, or like,
Yeah.
I'm just here for the vibes or whatever. And I see that from content people too. And no, like you're here to drive brand awareness. And even if that isn't super measurable, it is so freaking important. But I don't know. I think I've kind of fallen into that trap too, where I'm like, I'm just the paint palette, iPhone emoji, disco ball emoji marketer girl. I'm not like the charts and the graphs and the
Right.
spreadsheets. That's not me. One of the moments where I realized I needed to maybe rebrand myself as not being just the vibes, memes, content girl and really positioning myself as a data literate, data informed marketer was when I was on a team call with somebody that I really, really look up to and respect and have worked like pretty closely with. He essentially said that I was not a skilled marketer and I just make content. And I know that he did not mean that in a way that was disparaging to me. It truly was just how he saw my function in our teams. Like, oh, you're just making content. You're not a skilled marketer. And it was within the context of like growth marketing and performance and even managing budgets. And I'm like, I do all of those things. And I'm actually like really good at all of those things. Maybe like I haven't been forever, but at this point in my career, like I certainly am. And it wasn't a situation where like I wasn't able to do something because he thought that. It was just kind of like comparing me maybe to someone else in a way that like was not intended to be harmful at all. But that truly haunts me to this day that that is maybe how I'm perceived specifically, let's be honest, specifically by men looking at women like you and I in the workspace. Like, are we being perceived in a way that is maybe hurting our career growth?
Yeah.
And not to buy into corporate misogyny, but how much of that are we collectively as women putting on ourselves because we are leaning into this narrative that we're just here to post the memes and we're just here for the vibes? I think I love that energy, but I also feel like it is collectively hurting us.
I 100% agree. And I know, like, in my past, I've also had a man who has not said that to me in those exact words, but they've impacted my perspective in terms of like how important it is to be a more well-rounded marketer. And I still have his voice in my head a lot of the times when I'm thinking about like marketing campaigns and I'm in interviews and trying to sell myself. Like, you know, he was like the senior director of our department and he was really intimidating to me for the first like 6 months at this new role that I had. Because he was such a numbers guy and he was managing a bunch of other people that were all numbers people too. And then I'm like this new hire and I'm like the social media girly. And like, again, I think I 100% agree with what you're saying in terms of like we do ourselves a disservice by perpetuating that narrative that we are just those people. And I remember like in my one-on-ones with him, he would just constantly say like, you need to be showing your value and finding what that value is and what it means to the company. And again, he didn't mean it in a way that's like you're not valuable, but you need to learn how to tell that story of your value in a way that's going to make people listen. And I think like that is such an important skill to have as a marketer. Because again, you're going to be in rooms with people that, you know, don't get the vibes, don't get the memes, don't even care about them. But like, how do you, you know, present yourself? And also how do you, it's not even just like presenting yourself in meetings. How do you create pitch decks that speak their language in a way that's going to make them understand and make them care? Because the more that they understand and the more that they care, the more that you're going to get buy-in to do more creative stuff that you want to do because they trust you on that level. And I think that is such an important thing to have.
Yeah. If you're listening audio only, I'm giving Beth poetry snaps because I think that is just so true. I could not say it any better. I'm also like getting all of these ideas of how maybe we can continue to share this information because I think both of us are only getting better at this as time goes on. But I think lots more content to come on this because it is so important and it doesn't have to be boring and scary. I promise you, the strawberry smoothie is in your future.
I love a strawberry smoothie.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I think this was another fantastic episode.
If we do say so ourselves.
If we do say so ourselves, it's therapy. It really does feel like therapy every single week for me to dive into these different topics. And yeah, if you're like us and you found yourself being like, I'm just the like cutesy creative marketing girly that just like whatever. In fact, the more that you surrender yourself to just like being able to know that you can that you understand a lot more than you're allowing yourself to think that you do, the better off you'll be in your career and your marketing career. So yeah, it was awesome. Well, this was another great episode. We're so excited to be doing this podcast. I think Drue and I are just so grateful for all the listeners and all the feedback. And, you know, if you have positive feedback, negative feedback, whatever, like, or suggestions for content, like, please let us know. We're very open to exploring any and all ideas. And yeah, subscribe to us on YouTube
And Spotify.
and Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating on
Please.
Spotify if you like this content.
Or if you like us.
If you like us, if you think
Yeah.
we're cute, give us a 5-star rating. Swipe right on no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, subscribe to our Substack. Brain Rot goes out every single Thursday after our Wednesday episodes. We'll do a little overview of our podcast episode, but then we have like a little deep dive into a specific rabbit hole that we're exploring for that week. And then we also share jobs and we share cool content that we found over the internet. So it's a fun little community, little sister to this podcast. So subscribe to that. And yeah,
And
until
we'll see you next week.
we'll see you next week.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you.